Hey guys, Jay! Welcome back to the channel. So guys, this is a very special episode of the Mega J Retro channel. As you guys know, I have been following the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Turtles of Grayskull action figure line, and I gotta tell you, it is just it's supremely exciting, and in more ways than one. I first heard about this toy line last year, early last year, and I started doing some research on it, and I came across this article on Bleeding Cool that talked about the fact that a comic book was supposed to come out. And that excited me because, these are two of my favorite properties, Master Universe and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And I found out that the team working behind it was passionate about it and they had a lot of experience, including a certain artist who had been connected with multiple crossover series throughout DC and, of course, IDW. So I was really excited to find out more about this. I found out later that the project was unfortunately not completed for one reason or another. And then, fast forward about a year later, more like 2 years later, out of nowhere, Mattel literally announces that they're going to be doing the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Masters of the Universe with the Turtles of Grayskull. And we all speculated. A lot of us speculated as to what was going to happen, who was going to do the mini comics, because that was a big thing for us. We need to find out more about the story. And of course, Masters of the Universe having a rich history with mini comics, I was crossing my fingers. I was so much hoping that the main artist who helped to create or at least envision the original concept for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Master of the Universe would be brought on board. And you know what? As it so happens, that gentleman was actually brought on board, and I'm very very honored, so very happy to to have Freddie Williams II in the stream. Freddie, how are you, my friend? Welcome to the Mega J Retro channel.
Hello, thank you for having me.
You.
Thank you very much for the wonderful introduction. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. We are having a little bit of connection. Yeah, we're having some connection issues, but that's okay. We're going to continue, and
we might be having some lag.
Yeah, it might be a little laggy, but that's okay. I'm pretty sure that that we can get through this. How have you been, Freddie? 2024 has been one crazy year, and now being announced as the artist for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Master Universe, it's become full circle, I imagine, for you.
I'm so sorry. I can't hear anything. I can hear like little chops of stuff. So it's the same problem, I think, unfortunately.
Okay, you know what, Freddie, if do you have a WhatsApp, or because basically what I've done in the past is I've actually chatted. Let me hold on for a second. Do you have?
I have Zoom and I have WhatsApp. I haven't used WhatsApp very much.
Okay. Can you send me a Zoom link? I think that'll probably be. Let's see if we can do a. Okay, hold on. All right. Let's keep the camera going, but let's try to send me a Zoom link. And let's see if I can.
Let's try a Zoom link.
Okay, send me a Zoom link. Let's see if we can share that. Let's see if I can share that screen, and maybe we can get that going. Believe it or not, that actually might work. This is going to be interesting, guys. I've never done something like this before, but we will find out if this will work. Let's see how this goes. But guys, if you haven't met, or if you don't know about Freddie Williams, he is an incredible artist. He's worked for companies like DC, Marvel, IDW. His volume of work is absolutely massive. It's just ridiculous. And once we get the Zoom link going, I'll be able to ask him some questions. But for now, let me just log into my email and see if he sent me the Zoom link. Freddie, if you can hear me, can you tell us how you got into comic books? I'll just write him a note.
Yeah, I can totally hear you.
Okay. Yeah. So can you tell us how you got into comic books to begin with?
I mean, interest. So first of all, I did not send you a Zoom link. I'm not even sure how to do that. I'm an old man, so I don't know how to do that part. But I got into comics I was interested since I was very, very young. That's the only passion I've ever had. for like a profession or an interest really. And then specifically into DC comic books, that was in 2005. There was a San Diego Con, a DC Comics San Diego Con talent search that I was lucky enough to get chosen out of the group of people who applied for that. And so that got me working for DC at the very tail end of 2005. And then jumping way ahead to 2015. So 10 years later is when I did drew the first Batman Ninja Turtles crossover. So that was volume 1. And that opened up the Batman Ninja Turtles was so successful as a crossover that I was able to sort of keep on the crossover train, you know, back over and over. So I've been very lucky with that. So, all right. So I see a link. I'm going to try to use this. Give me just a second. Sorry for everyone that is listening. The tech problems is probably the least interesting part of any interaction.
It's amazing that you've had such a body of work. Actually, Freddie, is it any better now, or are we still having a choppy issue?
No, I can hear you pretty well right now.
Okay. Maybe we can just continue until it starts getting worse.
Okay.
All right. So I have a couple questions for you, Freddie, and thank you again for being here and giving us a little bit of your time, because I am absolutely thrilled with your work, and I really want to find out a little bit more about this. So I think. When did you decide to become an artist? Because you just mentioned that this has been your passion forever. Was it from a very, very early age?
Yeah, that's really the only interest I've ever had.
Wow.
So it's been my passion since I was very young. And it's not like I thought to myself, I specifically want to have this as a career. That would not have crossed my mind, because I didn't think of that stuff. I was just very interested in drawing. So I would sometimes stay in from recess so that I could draw Superman and He-Man and that sort of thing. So it's just always been my interest. When I was in high school, when I was 14, so I was a freshman, I met a senior in high school named Tyrone Crockett, who was the best artist in the school. And we became very close. We eventually became best friends. And he taught me how to draw superhero figures using the instructions out of How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way. So it shows how to draw with shapes and to flesh out the superhero form. So that made it feel like that was around the time of Image Comics starting. So that was a very exciting time. That's when I felt like maybe I could try to turn this into a career of some sort. I don't know. So that was whenever I was about 14. That's whenever I started taking it more seriously to try to hope that I could turn it into a profession.
Did you take any formal training or attend an art school at all?
No,
nothing at all.
So, so Tyrone was a huge impact on me. We became best friends. He was a great teacher, very charismatic, intelligent, funny guy who we were hanging out and having a good time drawing, trying to make our own comic books that never manifested. But at the same time, I was learning the basics of figure construction and stuff. Then after he moved to college, we still remained friends, but he slowly got out of art and he's in the tech field now and very successful with that, which is awesome. But, and then that I kind of branched off into being self-taught, looking at comic books, anatomy books. My sister, when she was much younger, worked at a Goodwill. So I say that because they would get in these big boxes of magazines that no one knew what to do with. And I would just take them all, because they would end up basically being recycled or thrown away. So I would just take them all and harvest them for reference material of, like, if somebody, if there's like an ad of somebody's arm, it doesn't show up very well on the camera, but like the wrinkles that are in my clothing or something that could be referenced, or the composition of a man standing very casually smoking a cigarette, like that ad, even if I don't smoke and I'm not looking to create advertisements, would still be useful as some sort of reference material. So that was all. It was just self-taught and trial and error and making a million mistakes and trying to figure out how to repair my ego and then become a better artist to hopefully learn from those mistakes.
That's incredible. I was an aspiring animator when I was younger, and
Mhm.
my career path took a completely different direction. So I can understand where your friend, at one point just said, this isn't working for me. I'm just going to move on. And then you ended up picking up the ball and just going with it. So that's amazing. What was your first comic book outside of a professional setting?
It's debatable. The book that came out the first was like the second one that I drew. It was an independent book called War God, who was kind of like an Egyptian Thor. That was the pitch for it. And it almost came out through Image Comics, and then instead it came out through a company called Speakeasy, which I don't think exists anymore. This was a long time ago in 2004, around in there, 2003 or 4. And but I had drawn a 3-issue miniseries before that, many years before that, in 1997 and 1998. So this is a very long time ago for anybody listening to this, probably. And I was young. I was 18, 19 when I was drawing this, and but it didn't come out. First of all, it's terrible. Don't go looking for it. If you find it, I pity you, and I'm so sorry. Luckily, the few books, there wasn't a lot of books that were published or actually printed, because it was a small press called Sun Dragon Comics. And then the storage locker that they had, all the backstock, got flooded. So I really lucked out with that there's not a lot of those in circulation. It sucks because they spent a lot of money on publishing and stuff. I'm just saying, of all the events I had no control over, that was pretty fortunate for me. So nobody, or not many people, have seen it. That book is called Vendetta, not V for Vendetta, but Vendetta. And it was written well. I just didn't know what I was doing, and I made every mistake in every issue of that 3-issue miniseries.
So everybody, look out for Vendetta, because that's a treasure for Freddie Williams II. He's
No
probably,
one look for it.
if you present that to him at a convention, he'll probably drop out of his seat. That's probably what's going to happen. But it's probably also going to be worth a little bit, considering his storied career.
Maybe someday.
So your first book was actually with DC Comics, is that correct?
Yeah, like my first, I did some freelance work that got printed in Image Comics on a book called Noble Causes. I did a pinup for before Invincible was the streaming show that it is now. I had a couple of pinups that I did for Robert Kirkman, and that got printed. So there was a little bit of published work here and there that was kind of mainstream. But then at DC Comics, my first work was on Seven Soldiers, Mr. Miracle, and that was very late 2005. It didn't come out until 2006, but it was a book that was very, very behind schedule. And when I came on, oh yeah, you have it up. When I came on to the book, I did like 5 pages of issue 2 to get that book just done, and then issues 3 and 4. Now later, Grant Morrison and the whole series, but mainly Grant Morrison. When I say the whole series, Grant Morrison, who wrote this, was the architect of something called Seven Soldiers. So there was like Frankenstein, Mr. Miracle, the Red Bullet or something. And then there was like 7, I think there were 7 miniseries basically. And he won an Eisner, or the whole overarching series of issues, or of series, if that makes sense, won an Eisner. So technically I won like 1/42nd of an Eisner, or 1/32nd of an Eisner, because that's how many people were technically involved in the series. And so I kind of won a little bit of an Eisner, but I don't have one. Anyway, so yeah, I did 5 pages in issue 2, and then all of issue 3 and 4. That was Grant Morrison. He's one of the biggest names, biggest writers in comics, especially at the time, but even now he's one of the greats. And that was very nerve-wracking, because I needed to have it done very quickly. And then after that, I jumped around on a few other fill-in issues, Aquaman, Firestorm. And then after that, DC had me do a tryout piece for Robin. And then I started drawing Robin for a couple of years.
Now, this particular book, Mr. Miracle, you were brought in after the fact. So did the first artist have an issue or a conflict, or how did you get started in the last 5 pages of the second book? How did that go about?
So I'm not privy to all their specifics. The first issue was drawn by Pascal Ferry. I think I'm probably butchering the pronunciation, but and he's an incredible artist. Yeah, that's issue 1. He drew all of issue 1. And then something happened where he was double booked. I would have to look up his like bibliography or something, but he was double booked with another another series that he had to do. At that time, I'm not speaking ill of Grant Morrison, but Grant Morrison was notoriously delayed or late on different things. So my assumption is that when they were supposed to start, Grant maybe needed more time, and then that pushed Pascal into his next project, which has happened to me before. Actually, it happened just recently, where there's delays that kind of push you into where you have to back out of a project before you can fully realize it. So he did first issue, Pascal did. Then the second issue was drawn mostly by an artist named Billy Dallas Patton. He has a great name. He sounds like a war general or something. And I don't know what happened with him, but he could not finish the book. He could not finish that issue, but he was supposed to originally finish the rest of the series. He did all but like 5 pages of issue 2 and then stalled for whatever reason. He could have had totally legitimate reasons. I have no idea. But that's whenever I got a call from Peter Tomasi, who later, Peter Tomasi is now a writer. He wrote a bunch of stuff for Batman and does creator-owned work now. But he was at the time an editor at DC Comics, Peter Tomasi. And so he called me and asked me if I would want to finish out Mr. Miracle. I said, yes, anything, please. But then it was like the catch was, and I'm not joking, it was, can you do an issue in 3 weeks?
Holy crap.
And I said, well, yeah, definitely. Especially because this was my first work at DC, but it gets worse. It gets tighter than that, which was Grant Morrison had accidentally written, I'm sorry if I'm going off in too much of a tangent, but this is great. These are the kind of things that you trip on whenever you're a brand new artist or throughout your whole career. But Grant Morrison had accidentally written, it was supposed to be a 24-page issue, but he had written pages like, 1 through 15, and then it went 16, 17, 18, 17, 18, 19, 20, and whatever. So he had written 2 occasions of like pages 16 and 17 or something. So now it was like actually a 28-page issue accidentally, because he had double booked those pages. So there was too many pages of info in there. And so I brought this to the editor's attention, and they said, well, can you still finish it in 3 weeks? And I was like, oh, yeah, it's going to be tight. And then after I turned in my first batch of roughs, they then said, you know what? Issue 2 just needs 5 more pages to be done. Can you also fit those in those 3 weeks? So it went from 24 pages to 28 to +5, which was 29. Then they asked me, and I was happy to, do a replacement cover for issue 3, because Billy Dallas Patton had already done a cover for that issue. And so it was 30 pages in 3 weeks. Now, I was working full-time at Hallmark Cards. I took as much PTO or vacation time, whatever they called it at the time, as I could. And I got basically no sleep. My wife, Kiki, she was very understanding, and she helped me in whatever way she could. In other words, this was at a time of the year where we have a lot of birthdays in our family, but she basically let everyone know he's not coming. This is his big break. He doesn't mean to be rude, but so I got it done, and I was totally exhausted at the end. And I remember getting a phone call like the following Monday after I turned in this huge amount of work. I got a call from Peter Tomasi and Michael Sigling. Michael was the assistant or associate editor at the time. Now he's a big wig at LucasArts, I think. But anyway, they called me on speakerphone, and they said how much they appreciated it, how professional I had been, how much there was some art changes I had to go through, because I think I had done some stuff, like I forgot to give Mr. Miracle a jacket in a couple of the scenes, and I had gotten a specific part of his costume incorrect in several shots because the reference, either I misinterpreted it or they didn't give me great reference. But the point, though, is I hit the deadline, because then the art fixes were like over the next day or two, which was fine. And that cemented me as a guy who was really fast, and you could throw me into the meat grinder. It's like, if you have 900 pages that have to get done tomorrow, that's the guy to tax to do that. And so for a few years I did that and I loved it. I was quite enthusiastic and I can still work like that. I mean, also, if you look at my style back then, it was incredibly simplified. So it's not as detailed as the stuff back here. So anyway, I'm excited for that time. But the thing is that many years later, just almost unrelated, one of my nieces was looking through one of my old portfolio binders. She was just like, I print off all the work I do or make copies of it and I put it in binders on the shelf. And she was quite young. She was maybe 8 or 9 at the time. She was just pulling out my work and looking at it. And at the time she wanted to be an artist maybe. And when she got to that years, the years 2006 and 7 and 8, I noticed something she was doing, not deliberately. She was just she was flipping through the pages way faster than she had the previous work. With the previous work before I got hired was more detailed. And then I had streamlined my process just to get 30 pages done as fast as I could. And it's like, even though she's not like a professional art critic or anything, there was something about it that it's like, it felt like it validated something in me. Like, I want to draw more detailed work. And I could tell by this interaction, just observing her, that this work, my simplified work for DC to get them out of deadlines was hurting what I felt like I enjoyed about the art. I enjoyed being productive and it was excellent paychecks, but the integrity of the artwork later I regretted. And anyway, it was one of the like 200 other reasons that I started doing more detailed work and stuff.
That's an incredible anecdote, and you know, I love the little insights that that you're able to give. You know, because looking at and this leads into my next question. Looking at your art style now compared to, you know, having a look back at this, I mean, you pretty much explained it. It's changed quite a bit, hasn't it?
Yeah, I think this might be the cover that Billy Dallas Patton did for issue 3, and then I redrew it. So this one is not my work, but I think it worked. It's good to see it as a part of the story, because I think this was his cover. Okay. And then I drew a cover where he's being surrounded by a bunch of enemies. They're all like different duplicates of the same. Yeah, that's the cover that I did. So this was one of the covers I mixed in, but you can see I didn't do any rendering. It's just structure drawing. Now I enjoy that because I have, you know, all the anatomy is not perfect, but I have a pretty good understanding of anatomy, so I could go pretty quick. But there's not a lot of I didn't do any gray tones. That was all on the colorist. I didn't do any hatch lines or anything like that. So, yeah, that was one of the 30 pages or whatever that I turned into those 3 weeks.
I also noticed that much to the same style as it was back then, it's very clean, almost animated like. For this. But I imagine that had a lot to do with your deadline. I mean, like, you know, in 30 days to deliver that kind of workload. I mean, that's crazy. And, you know, bravo for getting that done. I've known a lot of artists through the years. I'm friends with Adrian Alfona, who Runaways. And he says, you know, and his style is actually very simplified, you know, but very detailed, but very simplified. You know what I mean? Like it's overall.
No, he has great structure. So he understands anatomy and structure so well that he doesn't need a ton of detail to convey the form. So I think he's quite good at that.
Exactly. But again, less is more on that sense, right?
Yeah.
But in terms of his overall sequentials, one thing was at the beginning, he was very, very quick, much like yourself. But as obviously when you start getting into your own style and your own development, it was always his opinion that, you know, the art director is always like, yeah, can you get it done faster? Can you get it done faster? Can you get it done faster?
Yeah.
And that is the bane of every artist's, especially young artists in the industry. That seems to be their biggest hurdle in order to pass.
I agree with you. It can be the bane. It also can keep, you know, Kiki, my wife, she will, if I'm noodling on something, she'll sometimes come look over my shoulder at what I'm drawing and just say, I think you should take a break on that and, you know, come back to it later, because you might be in danger. This is what she would say, in danger of overworking it. And oftentimes she's correct. So the bane is the deadline, but sometimes if you have too much time, you can overwork it. And that is a danger that I've faced over that's been more of the danger the last like 8 years or whatever it's been, is I'm doing all this gray value. I do a lot of ink wash. So, oops, if you can see behind me, this is a poster that I did, but it's this is what the original artwork looked like, where it's all in gray tones. And so it's got pen and ink and pencil and ink wash and watercolor and sometimes Copic markers, like gray tone markers and stuff. So the danger of working like this is I can just keep going so much that it becomes muddy. And I've definitely fallen into that trap multiple times. So deadline can be good and bad. At least the deadline sometimes makes you go, good enough. And then you jump onto the next thing. And what you did in the more simplified version of that kind of detailed style can have a more of an impact, a more of an immediate impact.
And this is great stuff, because these are the things that younger artists have to start understanding, that sometimes you just have to know when to step away, right? I think that's the biggest problem that a lot of artists, even here in content creation, sometimes you're trying to tackle a problem and you keep throwing stuff at it, and all of a sudden you start realizing, okay, this looks terrible, right? You need to cut the wheat from the chaff, right? You need to cut the fat, if you will. And I think that's one of the strengths that comes from experience, and you can't replace that. So your list of wow, your list of work is, your body of work is extensive. Just with DC alone, I mean, like, there is, wow.
Yes, I've done a lot of work for them. Yeah. And now,
I mean,
for clarity, some of that stuff is, hey, look, a much younger version of me, before I started losing all my hair. But some of that work is like, I might have contributed like 2 or 3 pages to an anthology book, or let me see, what was I actually co-wrote a couple of stories, or I wrote a story that somebody else drew. But the vast majority of that is stuff that I drew, in its entirety. So, or some of those might even be just covers and then somebody else did the inside. But the vast majority, because I think I did like 2 years on Robin. I did almost a full year on the Flash. I did JSA All-Stars. I did 16 issues out of 18, 13 issues of Captain Atom. So a ton of stuff. A total 18 issues of Batman Ninja Turtles, and then a ton of covers and stuff. So it is a lot of work. But when anybody knows, at a convention, whenever they come up to me and they have like a stack of the old stuff, it makes me feel really good. First of all, I don't charge for signatures. I love to see somebody come up with a big giant stack, because they're breaking their own spine to carry that stuff around. I don't want them to injure themselves, but I'm saying it was worth it to them to injure themselves permanently just to bring me this work for me to sign. And I love it that it's showing that they've likely been following my stuff for years. And what bigger compliment can you get than somebody who's collecting all your stuff, even the stuff you're not particularly proud of, but they stuck with you the whole time.
Absolutely. And and as it said in the list, you weren't just an illustrator. You were a colorist. You were a writer as well on certain books as well. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the colorist part, it would be like I colored the last issue of Robin. I colored like a 6-page short story that was in the back of that. So I penciled, inked, and colored it. And then I colored a bunch of covers for myself, of course. And a lot of those Kiki also helped. My wife Kiki helps with that stuff too. So yeah, I've been very lucky that I tend to have a good rapport with editors, because I try to be punctual. But in addition to that, if I'm gonna have a problem, then I try to communicate with them very early. It's identify the problem early so that we can discuss solutions. Sometimes the solution is they'll go, actually, we built in a little bit extra time. It's okay. Just take the extra weekend. Your deadline was Friday, but get back to us on Monday or Tuesday or whatever. And sometimes it's like, okay, we see that you're going to need help. We'll bring in an artist to do 8 pages of this or something like that. So, but the early communication with the editor is valued. So then later, if I come to them and ask them, I'd like to try something new, I think they're, if it's within their power and the schedule, they're more likely to say yes, because hopefully we've established a rapport.
Absolutely. You have to trust your team at the end of the day, like most industries, right? And being able to talk to your manager or your art director directly is the key. And lines of communication, especially when you're working remotely. A lot of people are getting used to that now, where they're working remotely and people don't actually interact. But
Yeah.
I think a lot of people don't realize that artists in the industry for comic books, anyways, very rarely go into an office. They actually work from home, and
Oh yeah.
they have their own studios and things along those lines. So being able to work independently is incredibly important for the industry now.
Mhm.
How have you seen that evolve? Has it changed a lot, like or is
Yeah.
it pretty much the same?
Well, when I first wanted to get in as a comic book artist, this was at a time before the internet was utilized very much, especially by artists or by the editors or something. So if you the general model of work at that time, which would have been the early 2000s, would have been for them to FedEx, the editors to FedEx you something. Actually, let me rewind slightly more. It would be the highest probability of you getting hired is if you lived near the offices that you're trying to apply to. So this would be at Marvel or DC. At the time, they were both in New York. Marvel's still there, but DC is now in Burbank, California, I believe. And you would be forced to potentially go get the cheapest apartment you could find near the offices. And then this was like the conventional wisdom at the time. And then show up every week and show them new samples. Always be available if they needed you on some fill-in thing. And just hope that you don't run out of money first. Okay. Then about the time that I started getting in, you could work anywhere, but it would be hard to keep it would be easy for them to forget who you are, because the editors to forget. So if I was in, at the time, Kansas City, Missouri, and they're in New York and they don't see me very often, they might forget, or a new editor comes in, they don't know who I am. But the internet, at least then we could start emailing and you could upload your pages. Like you could send them a PDF of your rough layouts or something. They would still FedEx you your art supplies and the script, like a physical printout of a script when people use paper. And then you would usually finish your pages and then FedEx the physical pages to New York like a day or two before your deadline. Then within the first couple of years, scanner technology was a little less expensive, so you could actually afford one at home, and you'd scan it in and send it overnight. Magically, suddenly you've hit your deadline, even though you've taken up until the very last minute. So and then aside from that, so when I got hired by DC, this is when they were in New York, I'm getting a brand new artist rate, but I'm living in Missouri where the cost of living is much less. So I was, in a way, giving myself a raise. And that's kind of the way of things since then. So anybody, anywhere in the world who's a good artist or a good writer, especially if you live in an area where the American dollar is very, very strong, you can get incredibly talented people from across the whole world using the internet, and they can live in a place where if you pay them like half the price that you would pay an American artist, then you're getting an excellent you're getting excellent results with half the money, if that makes sense. So that's, I think, the ultimate. And by the way, I work with artists across the world, so it's not a negative. It's just a reality of the being connected completely around the world. If you live in a place that costs more and you have to demand a higher page rate, you're at a disadvantage. You better be really, really good and close with those editors than if you are very good as well, but maybe differently good, and you live in a place that you can take a half a page rate cut and then you still produce good work.
It's fascinating hearing you relate these old stories, because I remember listening to artists like Valentine or Adrian, and they literally said the same thing. They literally said that they got up one day and said, "We're not going to make it in Toronto. We're gonna go live in New York. Like we're gonna rent a house and live in upper state New York, and just run down and we will literally camp out inside the Marvel Studios and until they see what we're doing." And it was that kind of determination, that kind of grit that really got them. Of course, the talent is there too, but
Sure,
it was moreover they were willing to put in the time and sacrifice that kind of thing just to make it happen. So, hearing your story, it's like, oh my God, this is real. Like I thought they were joking. I thought that they were
Yeah, it's rare for an editor or for an art director who's hiring to come and find you. You generally, they have so many people in front of them that it's difficult for them to weed them out. They have so many talented people who are ambitious, throwing work at them, saying, "Please pay attention to me," that it's hard to stand out in that crowd. So I'm not sure what the modern day equivalent of that is, because I mean, I see people who tag me as if I could give them a job, which I cannot, but they tag me and a bunch of editors and whoever in their new social media post. I generally consider that a spam, and I just don't ever look at the post anyway. And I'm assuming that editors might be like that too, but I'm not really for sure. But there was a time where if you are super dedicated, whatever you can do to stand out. So in the old days when people would send in portfolios, physical printed out photocopied portfolios, there was like an artist who I knew who got custom envelopes printed, and he made them like blood red, maybe a little bit brighter than blood. But that, because he said, if there's like a stack of white envelopes and there's this red one in the middle, that will get the editor's attention. So they'll pull that out and look at that portfolio probably before the rest. And he was probably right. There was like that type of tenacity where if you're the guy who's willing to camp out outside of the Marvel offices and be there in their face, then they're like, this person's really dedicated. Let's give them work. There's a story I heard about Stephen Platt. I don't know if this is true, but if it is, it makes me go, like it. But that this is what I heard, so I don't know if this is true, that he was a Canadian artist, and for a class, they took a field trip down to New York, and they went to the bank to do money exchange. And he, was an artist who was drawing all the time. He had a bunch of his art kind of with him, and maybe he was going to hope to go to see Marvel or DC. But that while they were standing in the bank, he accidentally dropped some of his artwork that spilled out on the floor, and that there was an editor from Marvel standing in line who saw it and walked over and said, "Wow, these are great. You're hired." Now, I don't know if that's true, but when I heard that, it was like, I guess it was like hearing somebody winning the lottery. I mean, Stephen Platt is quite, he's quite talented. So it's not like he's not talented, but it's like anybody who would have gotten their job like that, it sounds like magic. And there's no way you could, how would you ever replicate or try to get that type of thing to happen to you? You can't. So I think the lesson I take from that is always drop your artwork wherever you go to get people's attention. No, but the lesson I take from that is if he wasn't talented, opportunity could not find him in the same way. So the lesson is a lot of people are trying to get into the same job that you are, but you need to be hopefully good, fast, and ready to pounce. Then you kind of put yourself, I picture it like this is such a weird analogy. A bunch of us are like, those salmon that try to swim upstream? Yeah. I'm picturing like a funnel of water. Here's the edge of the water. And there's all of us popping in and up out of the water. We're fish, okay? But above that, if you hit your X button or your A button hard enough and fast enough, you get into this slightly higher up meta layer where the editors fish for, okay? That is, you have to be really good. That's how you get to the top. But that slightly higher up zone is where opportunity will strike you the most. That's where if somebody offers you the job, you're not like, gee willikers, I'm just a little busy. I just can't really commit to that. Then they're like, you're out. They want somebody who's on it right then. Yeah. And they want your work to be super good at the moment that they happen to glance your way. If you're not ready right then, they're just going to keep looking. Get what I mean? It's a really sloppy analogy, by the way.
No. That makes the absolute most sense. I mean, it's literally like the claw machine games. The one that's actually at the top and ready to get picked. They're the ones who are, and you might actually just miss that chance, right? Yeah. It might grab you, right? But then if you say something like, this weekend doesn't work for me, all of a sudden, like, well, I got 60 other guys who are willing to take the job. So there was
Mike Carlin, who was an editor for Superman for like 20 years or something like that. He was an editor who I worked with on JSA All Stars. We became friendly later. He's now since retired, like I think last year. But anyway, he told me once, just out of a friendly thing, he was like, yeah, there was this one idea we had where Grant Morrison was going to do these different Superman one-shots, and we decided not to do it, but we were going to like pick you for the to draw one of them. And I was like, well, it's like he said this so quickly. I think it was at a dinner, or it was something casual, and he just slipped it right in. And I couldn't get that out of my mind. What I mean is, I felt flattered that I was considered as one of the contenders, or the whatever the highest contenders. But it also was like making me stay awake at night of this opportunity that I had missed of drawing Superman.
Yeah.
Superman's my favorite all-time character. I have a lot of favorites, but Superman is the tippy top favorite.
Sure.
Especially with Grant Morrison, who I worked with, all the way back in the day. So, but I don't think those one-shots even materialized. But it was like hearing about the possibility has made me lose sleep at night. I couldn't get it out of my head.
Yeah, but you have a wide, varied career, and all of a sudden you start to work on Superman eventually anyway, whether it was Injustice or any of these other. But you've done a dedicated book on Superman? No,
I drew Countdown issue 3, which was mainly a fight between Superman and Darkseid. I did an issue of Blue Beetle where Blue Beetle's kind of depressed, and then Superman comes down and kind of puts his arm around him and says, "It's okay, kid." We all kind of go through that, and they go off flying together and have a good time. He's like in there for like 3 pages or something. And then Injustice, where he's kind of like, he's the bad, or at least selfish version, or the fallen version of Superman. Yeah. So other than that, though, other than drawing him in the background of some stuff, no, I have not got to draw a dedicated Superman title, and I would love to. I would jump all over that.
But you got to fight. You got to draw him fighting Darkseid. So I mean, that how much more big? How much bigger can you get than that?
You can't really. They were punching each other so hard, through rocks and stuff. Yeah, exactly.
It's again those are the highlights that any artist lives for, as anyone will tell you. Your other claim to fame, because you have many, but this one really stands out. As a matter of fact, it sort of follows back into your own history, because you learned, as you said earlier, through looking at a book called How to Draw the Marvel Way. I'm paraphrasing, but yourself, I mean, you actually did end up creating a book of your own titled DC the DC Comics Guide to Digitally Drawing Comics.
Yeah, I was very lucky. Just recently, my friend Tyrone, who helped teach me how to draw and stuff, he sent me, just on a side note, he sent me a text message that Amazon sometimes recommends these 2 books together. Like, if you want to buy this book, you might want to buy these both together at a discounted rate. And that made me feel so much pride, because How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way book is a fantastic book. I still think there's quite a bit of merit and validity in it now. I still look at it sometimes for inspiration. And my book is less about like drawing figure work and drawing, panel compositions and stuff like that. But it's more about using Adobe Photoshop. But really, the techniques can be applied to Clip Studio or any number of other digital, Procreate or whatever. It's about teaching the workflow on how, like, file management, about sort of separating your project into steps, saving a version of your file as you go so that you can always go back to it, and then using, in Photoshop, they're called adjustment layers, but traditionally a comic book artist will use non-photo blue pencil to sketch out their initial structured drawings or that sort of thing, or they can. Toby says they're going to buy that book post haste. Please do. Yes, it came out a long time ago. I still work very much in that same workflow, the same thing that I wrote in the book is still applicable, but the book did come out 2009, so that's quite a long time ago. But in Photoshop or any other program, if you draw in black, you could draw your fast sketch drawing and then use an adjustment layer or some other means to make that look like a light blue under sketch, and then on a new layer, draw in black a slightly more final version or the fully final version of your structure. Or your composition or whatever it is. So it's a way to have reversible sketch work. But here's you won't be able to understand it anyway. This was whenever I don't even know if you'll be able to see it. Yeah. All right. So I'm doing a series of interconnected covers for Godzilla Power Rangers Volume 2. I'm showing this because I was upstairs with Kiki and we were talking about something. And so the inspiration of the composition being an unusual composition, usually covers go left to right, like 5 in a row. And then I thought, what if we did like a plus sign type of composition? And I sketched it out. So this was in pencil, but obviously this is really small. But if I had drawn this digital, I could just blow it up and then start refining those shapes into actual compositional elements. Obviously, no one can tell what this is because it's so terrible. These are like the scribbles. This is the very first base layer, the most embarrassing version of what hopefully will be a cool cover later on. But the point that I'm making is if you're working digital, then you can get all your compositional elements just the way you want them, all your spatial relationships and that sort of thing. And then either print those out in light blue on your artboard, which is the main way I work, or light gray, like a gray, so you can ink wash over them, that sort of thing. So, and those are called hybrid workflows. A lot of that stuff is covered in this book, the DC Comics Guide to Digitally Drawing Comics.
Now that is the digital portion of it, but you have a fresco behind you. Sorry, a fresco. You have a massive illustration behind you. I mean, this one is where the heck did it go?
The poster.
That is. Yeah, I had it in this. There it is. You have this poster up behind you right now.
Mm-hmm.
Now, did you draw this poster size, or was this on a blue line? Like how did this one come about?
It started off with what I call like a breakdown drawing digitally, so that I'm working out the composition, so that I can make sure also, because this was used as a variant cover, 6 different variant covers for Batman Ninja Turtles Volume 2. So it's like this would. The Batman part would have been like issue 1, and then where Michelangelo and April is, that would have been issue 2. Shredder is issue 3. So it's actually 6 covers all lined up. I sold the original artwork of this about a year and a half ago, so I don't have physically it. But yes, it's the same size as this poster. So it's like 30 by 30 or something, 32 by 32, something like that. And that I started off doing a digital layout or whatever composition, and then printing that out in light gray on the board, and then inking traditionally from there. The benefit of that is compositionally I get all my shapes in place, and all my proportions correct, hopefully as correct as I can make them. And then when I'm printing it out in light gray, it's going to be absorbed by the ink wash, and then also the artboard surface, the Bristol board, doesn't have a bunch of erasing. If I had drawn it traditionally, which I've drawn plenty of stuff and still do traditionally from start to finish, you can tear up your artboard if you keep erasing and drawing and erasing in the same area. It gives you a cleaner surface to work on as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can see. So, but were you working on blue line initially, or did you do most of this in digital? Because I can see the blue line sheets right here. I call them blue line, but
that's just the art template, the page template,
gotcha.
To make sure that to make sure that you're within like the bounds. This is, I don't even know if this will show up. Like, so you've already seen this artwork has already been released or whatever, but it's just the art template to make sure that you're working within the confines of the printable area.
Mm-hmm.
And these the little crop marks in the corners.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
like here. It's hard to see. Yeah, it's
the bleed marks. Yeah.
Yeah, the bleed marks. Just for those at home who didn't know that. So that's the blue part of that poster is the page template to make sure I'm working in the correct confines.
Yeah. So in print we call that safety and bleed. And so it's print. This is all print for those of you who aren't in the industry. This is all print terminology. So comics still work in the same fashion. The actual design process has not really changed over the last 100 years. Yeah. But it's amazing to still see that everything's still done on a traditional format, the way people draw and still work. But now bringing it into the digital age, utilizing those templates from literally like 20, 30 years ago, it's still very much used the same way. Incredible. So more recently, you've been worked on numerous crossover comic books, and now you've become known as the crossover king, pretty much. How did that get started? What instigated that?
So there was I had drawn the cover of I was at DC Comics under an exclusive for let's see, 6 years. And in 2012, I exited that contract or whatever. So I was no longer exclusive. So, but during that time, I had been approached by a bunch of different editors at different companies to draw different things, but I was prohibited because of the exclusive. Now that I was out, no one else knew that. Only I knew that. So I had to contact everybody I could think of. I made a list. I wish I still had the list because there would be some emotional sentimentality to me or for it. I made a list of like He-Man, Ninja Turtles, Transformers, G.I. Joe, RoboCop. It was like every, you know, and I haven't hit everybody on that list, but I'm pretty close, all right? That it was every property that I really wanted to. Now that I'm no longer exclusive with DC, I'm not leaving DC. I was doing plenty of work with DC, and I still do a little bit here and there, but I wanted to do what I could to try to actualize these other properties that I could somehow touch on them. And so I contacted DC Comics. I contacted IDW Comics is what I meant to say. Sorry about that. And got a hold of the editor for Ninja Turtles at the time. He's no longer there now. And I did the cover for issue 24 of the Ninja Turtles. And that was the first professional Ninja Turtle work I'd ever done. And it made me, I mean, I love the Ninja Turtles. I was really into them whenever I was younger. I mean, I was into them for quite a while, for like a decade of my life or something, my young life. So I started pestering that editor. Can I do some more covers? Is there a short story or a one shot that you might have in mind for me? And at the time, he would say stuff like, no, we're fine. We're covered, like that. And everyone was trying, by just to his defense, in his defense, a lot of people love the Ninja Turtles. Every artist probably wants to draw something with the Turtles. So there was about a year and a half where I couldn't get anything else. I did that one cover, but Bobby, the editor, had said, you know, we're talking about maybe doing a crossover with DC Comics where some Ninja Turtles. He didn't say who they would cross over with, but you know, you'd probably be a good fit for that if you know, because you have such a good, you know, working relationship with DC. But then like another year went by and I didn't hear anything from it. Whenever I would follow up with Bobby, he would say, no, there's nothing new. So what I'm getting at is business stuff falls apart all the time. You make a suggestion or a pitch to a company, you work on the details, and then it falls apart in negotiations. And that's what I assumed had happened between IDW, who has Ninja Turtles, and DC Comics. Then one day I saw Jim Chadwick, who just recently retired from DC Comics and moved to Spain. He had tweeted, check out this upcoming crossover. It's going to be Star Trek and Green Lantern. And that's IDW and DC Comics. And I just assumed, I was like, oh, well, if they're doing this crossover, they probably worked out some sort of avenue or whatever where they're greenlighting other potential crossovers. And without even checking with Bobby, the Ninja Turtle editor at the time, I just emailed Jim Chadwick, who I'd done a bunch of Batman covers for and stuff, he was working on DC Digital and a bunch of other special projects. And I emailed him and said, hey, you know, I'd love to draw this, maybe a Batman Ninja Turtles crossover. And I linked to him some Ninja Turtle work I had drawn, like warm-up pieces, the cover I drew as well. And he had already seen my Batman work. And then I also linked to him a Conan short story I had drawn, because at the time, it was the only ink wash sequential work, panel-to-panel stuff, that I had drawn in that style. And said, you know, kind of like, here's what I could do if you can kind of imagine all these elements mixed together. And I didn't hear, and this would have been in early 2015. And I didn't hear back from him for like a month or so. And I just assumed, you know, maybe I'd follow up later, but I hadn't heard anything back. And then one day, Kiki was taking a nap on her round chair in the old studio. And I got an email from him who he said, you know, we were joking in the office that you must have been psychic, because the day that they were talking about potential artists for Batman Ninja Turtles, I emailed them about, hey, take a look at these samples of the email I just told you about, the Conan and the Ninja Turtles stuff, all that portfolio work. And he was like, I think you'd be perfect for it. And so never had timing like that before. That was my Stephen Platt dropping my artwork all over the floor of the bank, assuming that story is not apocryphal. That was my moment like that, where I happened to email him on the correct day, and he liked what he saw. I kept expecting it to fall apart because he had me do two. I'm doing this for two pitch pieces, which are the covers for issues 1 and 2. Ended up being those 2 covers. Those are the 2 pieces that I did to kind of solidify my role as artist for this series. And I drew the issue 2 cover first, just technically. They liked both of those, and so they were like, "You definitely got the job now." And then San Diego Con would be in a couple of months. We're going to announce it then, and we'll just show your covers at the time. I hadn't drawn anything else. And that San Diego Con of 2015, I remember thinking, when are they going to announce it? And if they announce it and there's another artist where I've been usurped, because anybody would love to draw this. I mean, anybody would be super lucky to get to draw this. I was just nervous I would get the rug pulled out from underneath me, because it's not like we had a contract yet. So anyway, that's how I got involved. I very much am reverential to the Mirage version of the Turtles that Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird drew. I love them forever. And even though I'm not drawing the exact same faces and stuff, the sort of muscle mass of the Turtles and the grittiness, because I work in ink wash and they worked in something called duo shade, which gave them a different type of gray value. I feel like that's one of the reasons that the audience responded so well. It was a very popular series, and suddenly people were paying attention to the other stuff I was drawing. The sales were quite good. So, DC and other companies started approaching me, frequently to draw covers or, full-on crossovers of these other properties like He-Man. So it was first Batman Ninja Turtles Volume 1, then He-Man Thundercats, then Batman Ninja Turtles Volume 2, then Injustice versus Masters of the Universe, then Batman Ninja Turtles Volume 3, and then my next one was supposed to be He-Man and the Ninja Turtles. That was what, in late 2019, that was supposed to be the next project, but it stalled out, and there's a whole lineage of stuff there. Do you want to get into that now, or do you have other questions?
We were going to get into that anyway.
I figured, but
that's what we were going to get into. But before we get into that, I think you've already pretty much laid out how Batman TMNT went. I just wanted to ask really quickly, like when they finally did show it at San Diego Comic-Con, do you finally like breathe a sigh of relief? Were you totally like blown away that they actually said, "Oh my God, yeah, Freddy's going to be the lead on this"? Like,
yeah,
like that was
for sure.
And that was a dream come true, I guess. And
it was, yeah. So I have looked up to Kevin Eastman, who's one of the co-creator of the Turtles. Sure. I met him at that show for the first time ever. And
that's amazing.
Kevin is one of the few people who really does live up to your expectations and the hype and stuff like that. So really? I first meet him, and the interaction was maybe a minute at the most. But in the first 30 minutes, I felt like we were best friends. Like he's just so welcome. Anybody who's met him will know exactly what I'm talking about. He's just so warm and positive and gracious, because he's humble. He doesn't have an ego. But he feels quite lucky to be involved with the Turtles for so long, and that people have loved them for so long. And yeah, I breathed a sigh of relief. I remember I was over talking to Carl Potts, who he was an editor at Marvel back in the 80s. I never worked with him then. Of course, I was too young. But I've since known him because he worked at the New York School for Visual Arts, or the Art Institute of New York. I can't remember. And I went and done a speech there about working digitally and that sort of thing. And so we were on, we recognize each other, and I'm lucky to know him. And I walked over and he was like, "So what are you working on?" I don't think he had heard. And I told him, and I was like, "Yeah, I'm supposed to have issue 1 by by the end of December." And this one is like, right before August. And he goes, because he's an editor first, so his brain is thinking of deadlines. And he goes, "So we started on issue 1?" I was like, "No." I was like, "No, but we got some time." And he looked deadly serious. He has a very friendly face, but he looked deadly serious. And he said, "That's not as much time as you might think." And I was like, "You're right." Because right after that, it was like as soon as we got back from that convention, It was just deadline city, back to back to back. The ink wash style is something that I very much love to work in, but it is laborious. It's very time consuming to work in that style. So getting issue 1 done by December, and then the subsequent, deadlines after that. Carl was totally right. Carl Potts was definitely right. That's not as much time as you think, because it goes real quick.
I just wanted to ask, but we are going to move on to Master of the Universe, but it's interesting how experience really does help you in that regard, because obviously you thought you had enough time, and all of a sudden, but he reminded you, no, it's not. It's really you'll be drowning in a week if you don't keep it.
Yeah, yeah. And I had never done a full issue in this ink wash style, so I'd just done like a bunch of covers and some short stories.
Gotcha.
So it was a lot. Yeah.
What do you think? Just an opinion before we move on. Why do you think Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles has lasted and been relevant so many years later? I mean, we have Batman, right? We have Superman. We have Captain America. We have Spider-Man. But Marvel has worked very, very hard. DC's worked very, very hard to keep them relevant in today's thing. But Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, it really is one of those properties that surprises you every single time. Like every time you see it and it does its run, it seems like, okay, that's it, Turtles is done. But then literally not like a year later, 2 years later, another one pops up and it's just as popular as before.
Yeah.
What do you think? Why do you think it has this longevity? What appeals to people? What do you think?
The snarky answer or the commercial answer is that if I knew that, I wouldn't tell anyone, and I would just start making those types of projects myself. I would make the next Ninja Turtles that's so popular it lasts another 40 years. This is the 40th year anniversary, by the way, for the Turtles. This 2024 is their 40-year anniversary. But the point that I'm getting at is I don't know specifically, but if I'm to speculate, it was a weird enough mix of elements because it had supernatural, high tech. That piece right there, by the way, is a collaboration piece that John Samariva, one of my closest friends, he's an Australian artist who has drawn Ninja Turtles and a bunch of stuff for DC and all that stuff. We were in Australia for a convention earlier in 2023, and we were hanging out at the hotel, so we did this piece together. We both did everything on it. So we both did structure drawings, we both did ink, stuff like that. But my point though is that with the Turtles, they have a weird mix of, spiritual sort of mysticism stuff, martial arts, high tech, gritty crime drama, but they can also go into outer space. So now I'm just recognizing that they're awesome, not necessarily knowing why. Aside from that, since I've heard in different panels. Okay, that's a piece I drew 100% on my own. But I've heard it at panel discussions at conventions that they cross racial boundaries. Is something that never even occurred to me. I never even thought about them being a different ethnicity or whatever. There's been young ladies who said that they pictured the Ninja Turtles as being their boyfriend when they were younger because they just vibe with a certain person, type of personality and stuff. So I think that there's the message is that there's something for everyone, but nothing is crammed down your throat, and there's a balance of stuff. Just a bunch of cool stuff all mixed together. But there's plenty of other cool projects that have a bunch of other cool stuff mixed together that don't pick up, that don't take off and last for 40 years. So it's also a combination of them being really lucky, but also doing a tremendous job of coming up with something new. And also the rhythmic sound of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, I think also helps. There's something about that title that you can latch onto, and it makes people want to know more. Like, what is that? I gotta know more about that.
100%. And it just, there is something primal about it, right? Like you said, I'd never heard that before. I never heard that people actually can, relate because they really do not have any ethnicity, right? They are ambiguous in that sense. There's a Japanese connection with Splinter.
Yeah.
For the most part, they are from New York, or they're from the middle of maybe they were born in the ocean. Who knows, right? They are
Right.
They are part of the world, right? And,
Yeah.
and it's amazing seeing how that works. Last question on the Ninja Turtles:
Yeah.
The Last Ronin. You worked on a few panels or a cover. Like how did that come about?
I drew. All right, this is the closest I'm going to get to plugging anything in this. Okay, I just want you to check out anything that interests you. I'm not trying to sell anything, but this was this was as far as I thought as I would get into He-Man and Ninja Turtles, which was I had a bunch of prelim work that I had drawn. That's of the Last Ronin over here, but I had done a bunch of prelim work of He-Man and the Ninja Turtles in late 2019. Here's Raphael writing Battle Cat. Yeah, there you go. You got some of it. The point though is that in here, it's not just the artwork. It also like basically describes the timeline of how the project got greenlit. It's got a bunch of written stuff in it as well, sides and a timeline. That show in 2019, I was supposed to do He-Man Ninja Turtles. Kevin Eastman emailed me and he said, the next time we talk, because we occasionally have these marathon long phone conversations, remind me, or I'm gonna have to ask you about Last Ronin, or I'm gonna have to tell you about Last Ronin. That's all I knew, but I didn't know what Last Ronin was. Okay, he and I had once discussed a Leonardo one-shot story that maybe eventually one day will happen. I thought he was calling it The Last Ronin, so I thought it was going to be something about this Leonardo story that we had talked about. Then at the beginning of that phone call, he said, so the next thing you're working on is He-Man Ninja Turtles? Yeah, I'm about to start working on it in October. And he goes, oh, okay, all right, so that's what you're working on next. And looking back at that moment, that was me missing the opportunity to be one of the artists considered to draw Last Ronin. Okay, I didn't know it. Then skip ahead to Australia 2020. So this would be right before the pandemic happened. Me and John Samariva, that Australian artist that I was talking about, is one of our close friends. We were in a conference room with Kevin Eastman, and he was showing us all of this behind-the-scenes work of Last Ronin. He had these sketchbooks. He was working on them at that time. This is Kevin Eastman's development work that he was doing to establish the visual look and feel of Last Ronin. He then handed these pages to the artist, whose name at the time the artist was Andy Kuhn. Andy Kuhn is an excellent artist. He's done lots of stuff for the Ninja Turtles over the years. While we were there in March, the project got re-greenlit for like 3 or 4 days. He-Man and Ninja Turtles did. Then when we got back home, it got canceled, and Andy Kuhn left Last Ronin. So if this makes sense, hopefully you're following me. If not, maybe either because I talk about it on Bleeding Cool and also in the sketchbook or whatever. When Andy Kuhn left, I missed the second opportunity that I was going to have to draw Last Ronin, because Kevin Eastman was like, oh, so He-Man and Ninja Turtles is back on? Because I know for a long time you said that it was on hold. So what I'm getting at is Last Ronin I wove in and out of. I don't know 100% for sure. I mean, I've talked to Kevin. He said, oh yeah, I was considering you. That's one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you about it. But it's not like it was a done deal or anything for me to draw the Last Ronin. But I missed 2 opportunities to be one of the artists, because he had like 5 or 6 artists work on this stuff. It was Ben Bishop, the oh boy, I hope I don't mess up their last names, Escondero brothers, which are really great artists who do a bunch of Ninja Turtle stuff. Andy Kuhn was there, and then he left, Kevin Eastman himself, and I think there was other artists who helped along the way. So what I ended up doing was just like 3 or 4 covers for Last Ronin, and that's it. So I feel like that in-between zone of hopscotching that's the opposite of going to the bank and dropping your, that's you passing by the editor right as he's leaving, and your papers fall out after he's turned his back. So you almost had the opportunity, but you missed it. And then later you find out you missed it, and it sucks,
I'm really in love with some of these, and they're sequentials, but they're more like full page, travels, right? Because here you see April just reminiscing about her days with the turtles, and writing down stuff on her notebook. It would have been great to see this again, just geeking out, right? It would have been amazing if you had been given the opportunity, but it's that elevator pitch, right? Sometimes you're there, and like you said, you
sometimes you're in the right place at the right time, and sometimes you pass by and you bump shoulders and you don't realize it. I don't know.
Yeah.
Whatever the analogy is.
You didn't drop the portfolio on time. That was the problem.
I didn't. I need to drop it faster and more often. Could you imagine if that was actually the strategy? You just carry around your artwork and you keep dropping it and then picking it up and then dropping it again. People would be like, we have to call the cops. Get this guy out of here. You'd have all these footprints on your artwork too.
Absolutely. But you were able to draw a few covers. Which ones of these were? Sorry, I can't remember which ones they were. It wasn't. Was it this one or was it?
Yeah, that's one of them. That was for Last Ronin, the Lost Years or something.
Gotcha.
I did a variant. So for the original the original Last Ronin series, I drew a variant for issue 1, issue 3. I did a collaboration cover with Kevin Eastman on issue 5. And that's it for the original series. Then Last Ronin the Lost Years, I did that cover that you just had seen where he's got like arrows stuck in his back all over the place. Then the sequential pages was for the Last Ronin Lost Day or Last Day. It's like they keep adding confusing titles to it that almost sound like other titles. Yeah, that's for Last Ronin Lost Day, I think, or something like that. And then the new series is about to come out. That's supposed to come out in February, I think. I am drawing a couple of variants for each issue. That's called Last Ronin 2 Re-Evolution, or it almost kind of looks like Revolution, but it's Re-Evolution. And those I haven't put up yet because they haven't been announced or shown publicly.
So I guess we got a bit of a scoop here. So you are actually going to be doing a little bit of work inside of the next. That's excellent. Wow.
Thanks.
I mean, just that's absolutely incredible. All right. So again, your body of work just continues to grow, but you already touched on our major subject here for tonight, and obviously, I think a lot of people have been, for myself included. I mean, like when I first saw it on Bleeding Cool, I was like, "What is this? What's going on here?" And I, as you already know, I'm a huge Master Universe fan and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle fan. So when this project got announced, well, actually before this project got announced, I heard murmurs and rumors about this idea that there was a comic book, at least in the planning stages, for a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Master Universe crossover. And then I did some research, actually, where is it here? I thought I had, sorry, that's
okay.
Yeah.
I want to fill in while you're looking. I'm going to say a few things.
Sure, go ahead.
Is that so there's a toy line that's called Turtles of Grayskull. And when that was first rumored, and I don't know who was the first person to leak that information or anything, I just know that you were the first person of dozens. The reason that you and I are speaking right now is because you were the first person to approach me about that information. This would have been back in, I think, late April or early May. It would have been around in there.
Yeah.
So that's number one. And I could not respond to you. I left your messages purposely unread because I have contracts with Mattel that basically say it's like they're almost like NDAs. They're kind of like NDAs. It's like to even talk about them at all is like kind of breaking, not me now, I'm saying to talk about it in advance is like to break the information. So I couldn't say, yeah, it's going to happen. I just can't show you the artwork. I'm not even supposed to mention that it's going to come about. So there's somebody at Mattel who's seen a screenshot of your message because I sent it and I said, I heard he's approached me. I don't know who this is. I have not replied. I think actually I did reply. I said, because I think you messaged me and I wrote back, wait, what's the link or where's this rumor coming from? I think I might have asked you that once. And then after that, I left other messages unread. Even though I saw them, I just couldn't respond to them. But then also the videos that I've seen of yours, you have a very positive attitude and you're well-researched and I appreciate that. And then when it came out, your enthusiasm, I'm saying when the actual international version of the toy that came with the mini comic was put online and you saw that, you immediately made me aware of it. And I freaked out. I also forwarded that to Mattel. But the point that I'm getting at is I felt like you have such a positive energy and a well-researched that's why I wanted, because there have been other people who have approached me about this, and this is the only interview I'm doing so far is with you about this, because you also did that audio play of the first mini comic, and it was great. So I was like, I've got to talk to this guy.
And I appreciate that so much. Thank you. Thank you for that. I think I found it. Give me 1 second here. So yeah, cool. Speaking on that, Freddie. So obviously we are discussing this. This was like the first one of the first ones. Yeah. And again, I'd heard rumors, right? And they were just coming out of nowhere, right? Good friends of the channel. I can't take the credit. I can't, because good friends of the channel, Toy Habits, had actually sent me. Just again, it was all rumor. It was all rumor, but it was such a rumor that we were just like all of us were freaking out, right? And we're saying, okay, Turtles. Actually, I think this is the second thumbnail. I think this is actually, yeah. See, this is what. Here's the timeline here. So first one, and by the way, I apologize. I just took your artwork and I mashed some things together. You know, just put some flats. It's fine. I put some flats down. You know what I mean? Because again, a thumbnail on YouTube is one of those, it has to catch you, right? Yeah. But I was so enthralled by the whole idea, and because of that, I went back and I found your whole storyline. The fact that you were gonna actually create this amazing comic book. And of course, I reached out to you right away. I'm like, you know, Freddie, I'd love to talk to you. You know, want to find out more about this stuff. And you did ignore me, and I was like, I was hurt a little bit. You know, I was like, okay, he doesn't want to talk to me. It's okay. No.
I just couldn't. There was no reply I could think to give you that would both address what you were asking, so I sounded like I understood and was a cogent human who had the ability to communicate, or to flat out lie. And I didn't want to just lie to you and say, no, it doesn't exist and I'm not involved. That would suck even worse. So instead, what I did was, so I left it unread, or at least maybe I replied on one. I can't remember, but I basically left it unread. And then I went upstairs, and the next meal, because Kiki and I will take a break. We'll take a lunch together or something, because Kiki and I work together all the time. And we went upstairs and we streamed your video on the front room TV. And so I'd already seen, you know, that the designs are different stuff. Your speculation of what you thought could or maybe or didn't happen sometimes was right or wrong, of course, just because you have no information. But it was fun to see you assembling the pieces and putting them together. And so Kiki and I were getting a kick out of it. Yeah,
it was incredible. And you know what, the journey, again, often the journey is the part you remember the most. By the way, if you guys know where that quote's from, you're hilarious. But the thing is that tracking it back and looking at some of the things that were leading up to this, and then, you know, additional rumors came out. I did the second video. They talked about waves 1 and 2. You know, the fact that the first one would be Leonardo, the second would be Donatello, and then and then there were these weird rumors that, you know, Man-at-Arms would be mutated maybe, or He-Man would be mutated maybe, and we're like, what's going on? Like, you know, a lot of us were, and we are all in the dark. Really, we really have no idea what is actually happening. So as I'm researching, I said, okay, so what's going on here? So obviously, eventually, it led me to your page. I mean, this is where my mind just got blown. I was like absolutely like gobsmacked. I saw all this incredible artwork. I was just blown away. I was like, is that Castle Grayskull? Are they wearing Eternian armor? What is going on here? This is absolutely nuts. And you know what? I dare say, if you I hope you you take this graciously, but I think they should have. Wrong one. I think they should have taken more of your ideas. I mean, I think they did somewhat, because obviously Leonardo's sword does split. I mean, we see that now, right? He's got two halves of a power sword, right? Or at least a sword, but they do join together like He-Man's sword does, right?
Yeah, I honestly, I see what you're saying. I don't know what they were privy to or not, but I mean, to me, so when I was designing this idea of the sword splitting apart, I was thinking of the original toys where He-Man and Skeletor had two halves of the same power sword or something. Right. You can merge them together. And I didn't want to I was thinking of a way, what would be more applicable for Leonardo to have? It would be if they split the other way. Now, later, He-Man Revelations, I think that's what it's called, had the power sword split in that same way. I think it's just logical deduction. I think anybody who's looking to spin an idea that already exists can only spin it so many different ways, and it's going to look similar in some way. So a splitting power sword is something I took from the toys. And then I think they were thinking of the toys, or if they saw this, that's fine too. I don't know. I don't think so, but
I love it. You know, I love it, and I love the idea that. And again, this is just my own theorizing, because he has He-Man straps, he has He-Man overall getup. I figured that somehow, you know, he much like the Marvel's Thor, he was deemed worthy by the Eternian powers that be, and basically like He-Man's like Adam's trapped somewhere, so another champion has to come in and you know, somewhat temporarily take over. So they bring turtles in from another dimension, and they have to, you know, temporarily defend. Or another theory I had was that they are in a multiverse, and the turtles are actually the chosen ones, right? Like because you had these other amazing designs, right? You had Raphael, right? And of course, Raphael's a bruiser, and Donatello is the scientist. So, you know, my mind just kept racing and like coming up with all these theories. Then your artwork came out of nowhere, and I was like, oh my god! Like Raphael is the captain of the guard. He's got Teela's sword.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I was losing my mind. I was absolutely, and I don't know. Did that sensibility come in? Like, is this Teela's sword? Can you share with us?
Oh yeah. So it's like, so the original version, like the crossover that got canceled, had its own story, and from the mini comics that exist, the stories do not resemble each other at all. But when the 2019 version of the crossover, if it had come to fruition, was going to be written by Tim Seeley. Tim Seeley has done tons of stuff for He-Man, and he also wrote Injustice versus Masters of the Universe. So it was, you know, the evil Superman versus He-Man. And we clicked together. We've done a creator-owned book as well. Tim and I get along very well, and so I was pushing him to write it. He had never been officially approved as writer, but at PowerCon of 2019, me and him and a bunch of other people were at this table. We talked about a bunch of ideas. We then, on a phone call, started talking about other stuff. And what he was saying was, yeah, anything you want. He was saying that kind of stuff, anything you want. Because Tim was very excited at the idea of doing it. And of course I was too. So after the project was on hold, and after PowerCon of 2019, which was mid to late August, I had a couple of months there where it's like, I'm just in a holding pattern, and I'm afraid to take on another project, because I'll be double booked if suddenly they greenlight or if they take out of hold and put into the green zone this He-Man Ninja Turtles. So I just started, every idea that I had that we had talked about or that just came to my mind, I started drawing designs and sketches for. So yes, the idea that I had was, and I don't know if this will still be used, because if this crossover ever gets reignited, maybe we can still use the story, but it would be where He-Man is banished to Earth as Prince Adam, and he doesn't have the access to the power of Grayskull anymore. Wow. And so there's a version on that same website you were just on where there's a shot of Prince Adam kind of dressed up like a feudal Ronin or something. So he doesn't have any armor on, but he's got like leather straps and stuff. That's what Prince Adam has. And my idea would be that Splinter had taught Prince Adam, yeah, that's it, how to fight, you know, with a katana. Which, imagine how formidable He-Man would be if he also knew ninjutsu. So not only could he just cut through anything, but if there's a guy who's on his equal power level, he would have superior swordsmanship as well. And then, yes, the turtles would be in Eternia, cut off from Earth, and they would have been integrated. But Leonardo was the most worthy, the most honorable of the turtles, and he would have the power of Grayskull. That's the kind of stuff it's like we were just tossing around ideas. There was never even not like a full script written or anything, but these are the kind of stuff that Tim and I was talking about. So you're correct on some of your assumptions, but if it ever happens, maybe we could do it. I don't know.
Oh God, it's sending shivers down my spine just hearing you talking about it. Like, seriously, I mean, some of the ideas did survive. I mean, you know, a little bit switched over, but Ram-Man's helmet on Mikey actually got switched over to Raphael.
Yeah, which actually makes more sense. It makes more sense
he's the bruiser, right? He's the bruiser of the group. Yeah, no, and I love that. Here's the thing. Now we're going to get into the actual comic itself. So
yeah,
well, let me just let's just go through the rest of the characters as they were. So Donatello, obviously being the tech genius, he took on the role of Man at Arms, and he's got Man at Arms Club on both ends. We can see something like that. But it also has a very Star Wars, almost like a kind of ish feeling for me. These almost look like what's it called, training droids. I don't know if that's what you're like. That's what I felt. But he.
Oh really, yeah, I was just thinking of the mace that Man at Arms has is depicted in several different ways, and I was just picturing he had basically two maces that were stuck together in a staff.
You see that has also crossed over. Right, because right now Donatello has a mace-like weapon, which is gigantic, and everyone who saw it at the very first unveiling said, "I wonder if that hooks up with Man at Arms version, so that it can become this gigantic two-ended staff." So again, I
don't know. That would be cool if it did. I don't know.
But a lot of fans have been speculating on that. Now we don't know yet, because actually we could. I think people have already figured out it doesn't, but still, people were hoping that it would. Right, so it's just amazing to see all these ideas and how they flushed out. I really do wish that we would have had a moment. Maybe we will. We never know, right? The comic continues, but for the comics we do have, and this one's probably going to autoplay again. So here's the first issue, and this is the issue that I sent your way. And I know you at the time was like, I can't talk about it. I'm like, no problem. I'm still going to do a video. And I did a voiceover for this. I'm super excited about this whole series. So,
not to cut you off, but actually, there was a video that was released that somebody had the international version of this of the mini comic that doesn't have any of the verbiage, doesn't have any of the word balloons.
Correct.
And when I saw that, because you brought it to my attention, and I then asked Mattel, was this a mistake? A, was there supposed to be word balloons and they forgot? Or B, was it supposed to have been public yet? And I know they replied to me, but they might have just been like, yeah, it's fine. Like, somebody released it early. But I still avoided talking about it too much. But I was like, at least the artwork is out there, so I can say, yes, I'm involved with it. I don't have to be as defensive or as barricaded as I was with you. But then you did a video where you just you looked at the sequential artwork and tried to infer what was happening. You were really close. I mean, there's visuals, of course, that show it, but you were close with the dialogue too.
I was surprised. I was surprised how close I got. But again, the mind wanders, right? It really does. But this video here, where I actually go through all the sequentials. First of all, great work. I mean, first, the other thing I wanted to ask, what's it like working in this format? This is not a traditional comic book format. This is like more square. It's not really, long, or it's not that long. It's actually shorter. Did you find any difficulties with? Did they have a template to work with?
Yeah, they had a template. So first, let me say. So what happened was that the head at Mattel, his name is Rob David, who I worked with on He-Man, Thundercats. I have to keep all the names straight. He was one of the co-writers for that. He had called me and he said, we're doing a toy line. This is before any of the visuals or anything like that had been released. We're doing a toy line, and we remember what had happened with the comics and how it got delayed and then got canceled. We would love it if you're still interested in drawing the mini comics. He was like, the story is very different than what you had planned out, but we wanted to ask you first. And I was like, yes, I feel so super lucky. Thank you for keeping me in mind. I mean, I love Mattel. Mattel's responsible for a lot of stuff that has shaped my life. He-Man, I get some of my moral code from He-Man and from Superman. They were right up there. I used to draw them at recess. So I feel very lucky to finally get to draw them, even though it's a different format of the normal comics, and it's a different amount of space. So I have to be much more simplified in the artwork. What you're pointing out, it was, it's like an adjustment. This is the original art, but that's, page 2 or 3 or whatever it is. So you can see on an 11 by 17, it's quite a bit smaller. It's more like 13 by, or like 11 by 13 or something is the size of the artwork. That's what we call the live area. on an original piece of 11 by 17 paper. But I have to be more simplified with the details. I have to be much more spatially aware. I can't remember, but it's like trying to compact everything that's happening. Wave 2, by the way, was recently leaked. I'm just pointing out that the Wave 2, half of the Wave 2 mini comic has also been released on Twitter. I saw it like 2 or 3 days ago. And so I can say I've drawn that one too. I can't say anything else about how much I have or have not drawn, but I can say that different parts of the story are much more complex visually than some. So it's like this page that you're getting to now, that's like a big splash page that has the Ninja Turtles meeting, Teela, Roboto, and Man-at-Arms. Thank you. I swear to God, I almost said Mr. Miyagi, and I don't know why. I had Mr. Miyagi in my brain. I was like, "Why am I?"
He's the mentor. Yeah.
No, that's nice of you, but I just messed up. I lost my mind there for a second. I knew it was with an M. Mr. Miyagi sounds right, but you can see it's a challenge to get all the figures inside there when there's it's a smaller page. Mm-hmm. You can't draw them as big, and the word balloons are a little bigger for a younger audience and stuff. So it is challenging. And Steve and Damon, those are my two main contacts at Mattel, have been excellent at responding back and forth about how I allowed enough space and that sort of thing. And if I have a tendency to try to cram more in there than I should, because it's a different format than what I've been working in for 20 years. Yeah.
Absolutely. So the format is different, but at the same time, it's still very familiar. How was it to finally put pen to paper on this and really come full circle? Basically, I mean, this literally started back in 2019, and now you're all the way in 2023, and everything is finally coming together. I mean, what was it like seeing all of these elements finally come together?
Even though the designs are very different, and it felt like a full circle, almost not like it's completed and it's over. But what it felt like was getting to circle back and seize upon a similar opportunity of the. I guess that's too literal. I guess it just felt like a big accomplishment, and frankly, I'm just very happy to be involved with it. I've never drawn. I also like just experimentation in different size and format changes, because it's no longer things that I would normally take for granted or be on autopilot about. I can't do that anymore for this type of size. It's a different shape, as you described, it's more square. And it felt like a big accomplishment, an accomplishment that Rob David and other people involved were, and IDW and stuff, were all like, we should give Freddy the first crack at this because of what almost happened in 2019. They've got a lot of stuff on their plate they could have easily forgotten if, it's been 3.5, 4 years, whatever it's been. And if they'd gone with another artist, I would have been like, dang it. But I would have understood. It just would have been, the whole world's been through a pandemic and whatever else since then. So if they had forgotten, understandable. But I just felt lucky and flattered that they let me draw it. By the way, the last couple of pages here were drawn when we were traveling to New Zealand. I'm bringing that up because it was like you're on the flight for like 18 hours or whatever it is to New Zealand, and what else are you going to do? But I also had deadlines, so I had to just draw the whole time on the flight over. Then when we got there, in between the conventions, because we were there for Wellington and Christchurch, I was working on these last couple of pages. And I couldn't upload like the final, but I was uploading high-res JPEGs and stuff like that, just so that Mattel could see where I was at. Because technically I was like within the deadline that I finished it, but I just couldn't upload the high-res pages yet.
Right. And it's amazing. And you're exactly right. What else are you going to do on a plane for like 18 hours, right? It's just this. You might as well doodle, right? At the end of the day. Right?
Yeah. I mean, some people watch movies. I sometimes put that in the background, but usually it's listening to, I'm an old man, so I'm listening to stuff that would be like classical music now, but at the time when it came out, like, Metallica and Soundgarden and Alice in Chains and I don't know, Black Sabbath, and all that stuff is like old dad rock now, but at the time it sounded quite powerful.
But there are a lot of videos online where younger people are recognizing and discovering this new music, and they're just absolutely blown away by it. So it's not gone yet; it's coming back. Old rock, old music is coming back.
There you go. I'm cool again. I'm cool, kids.
Absolutely.
Check me out. I'm into Metallica.
Absolutely. Actually, you're a trendsetter. What are you talking about? That's
Yeah, totally.
All right. So he hasn't been announced yet, but he's in the comics. So I think I have a little leeway here to ask a question, at least one question. Is that real hair on Michelangelo's head? Can you tell me that? Can you tell us if that's real hair? Because that's the burning question that all of us TMNT fans have right now.
You keep throwing me these hardball questions that I can't answer.
You can say no. You can say no.
I don't know, but either answer, if it actually grew out of his scalp, or if he's wearing a wig, both answers are adorable to me.
Yes,
I love the idea of him off screen growing 2 years worth of hair just randomly, or that he thought to himself, I have to fit in with everyone here because they all have hair, and he puts a wig on his head. I don't really know, but I just thought it was really adorable.
What and was this your idea? I don't think you can answer the question, but was this your idea, or was this like in the script or something like that? Because he looks awesome. He looks absolutely ridiculous. Like, I love it.
I didn't design him. Okay. Of course, I did a design back in 2019.
You did.
That's not what they used. I'm not sure who designed these, but they showed me. They had like 3D renderings, and they had like front and profile shots of each of the characters. But I'm not actually sure off the top of my head who created them. And he had hair in those designs.
So I think we should stop there, because maybe that's giving away too much. So we're gonna go ahead and stop right there. We're not gonna. I mean, he's been drawn. He's in the comic. We can sort of infer, and it looks like he's wearing battle armor. I'm just talking. I'm not saying that he is. I'm just saying it looks like he's wearing battle armor, and we're gonna stop. We're gonna stop right now, because Freddy's gonna get really. He's gonna say
yeah, you're asking me. I start sweating. I'm like pulling out my shirt. So I see some of the chats or some of the questions in the chats, and I'm happy to answer some of those if you want to. So before we wrap up,
let's go for it. So basically, Steve Vendetta says, "Hey Freddy, you're my favorite TMNT artist in the IW and IDW era. Who's your favorite character to draw from TMNT supporting cast?"
Thank you very much, by the way. And there's some excellent. I think my favorite artist, just on a side note, is Mateus Santaluco. I think he draws the best of the modern turtles. But thank you very much for me being one of your favorites. Supporting casts. I mean, if you consider Casey Jones a supporting cast, but I think he's probably too main to be supporting. So. Let's see. Mondo Gecko. I'm sorry. No. I'm gonna throw him under the bus suddenly. Any Triceraton. I drew 2 or 3 covers with the Triceratons on it for a series for the Ninja Turtle covers, and I could never make them big enough or muscular enough. I could just keep piling on the mass, and they looked cool. And they're one of the coolest characters or a group of characters from the Mirage books. So probably the Triceratons, any of them.
Excellent. Let's see here. Where's another good one? Okay, so here we go. Uncosplay says Grant Morrison not being cohesive in the writing process. That seems like most like the most Morrison thing ever.
Yeah, probably. So I've never met Grant Morrison, but I have listened to some of his. There's some panel discussions online from different conventions he's been at, and I think he has an actual 5th dimensional brain. So if you think of like, height, weight, depth as like the 3 dimensions, and then the 4th dimension can be described as time because we experience it linearly. That's a dimension. So that's all 4 dimensions loosely defined. And I think he has a 5th dimensional brain. I think he thinks of events that happen in our 4th dimensional space as events he can peer through and somehow create storylines from. Because reading his scripts at times can be slightly hallucinatory. I'm a very straight-laced guy, so reading some of it, because Grant Morrison will write in his scripts asides that are not really relevant so much to the actual drawing, but it's like his brain just got picked up by an alien, and then he wrote weird stuff in there. It's still, you can understand the words, but to understand the concepts, it's a little bit more difficult, but it's interesting when you're reading it. You're up 24 hours drawing and you're like, wait, what is he saying? But yeah, he's all over the place. He's known for being really funny, but also, and super smart, but also bizarre.
We have another question from Hordables. Curious about how much time between Freddy's deadline and product releases for the MOTU TMNT toy line.
So okay, so that's actually a good question that I have. When I first received when we first started talking about it, it was almost like this time last year. And then about a month or so later, I started getting the toy designs, and there were, on the toy designs, it said for release of fall of 2024. So I thought that this, would not come out for like over a year. I thought it wouldn't even come out even now in January of 2024. I thought it would have been, July, August, September of 2024 by what I thought was on the labels. It said release fall of 2024. So I'm not sure if they just changed the timeline or if somehow they see fall as the winter or what it is. I don't know. I do know that we worked very far in advance. So in April was when I was finishing Wave 1. Wave 2 has already been shown online, so I've drawn the Wave 2 stuff. That was shortly after I got back from, that was in between, for me, in between New Zealand and Australia, because we had a short period of time there. Anyway, the point, though, is that they work pretty far in advance. It's at least a few months. It's at least 6 months, I guess, probably 6 months.
Chris Brown has an interesting comment.
No! No! Chris! Chris and I are friends on Twitter, and that's terrible, Chris. You need to throw them in the trash. That he found 2 of the 3 issues of Vendetta. Yeesh.
Just needs to find the first issues.
Okay, the first issue is the worst one. So just stop now.
Stop right
while
now.
You're the least, where you're the most ahead. I don't know, because issues 2 and 3 are better than issue 1, but they're all bad. I mean, I made every mistake you could make. So I'm thinking about doing like a few in-depth video series on. I'm going to critique a bunch of my early work and stuff. And Vendetta is just a prime fertile ground for me to just tear my younger self apart because I've made every mistake. So Chris, just don't show anyone. No one will have to see those ever again until I tear it apart later. I don't know.
He's got some blackmail material right now. Leatherhead for Hire. Hello, Jay and Freddy. Freddy, your sketchbook of MOTU TMNT is one of my favorite books in my entire collection. So captivating. I especially enjoyed the story you logged throughout the entire time.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, I very much appreciate it. Thank you. So the sketchbook I put together at a time, it was even before. So I've drawn Godzilla Power Rangers, which was in 2021. This was all, this was written and created and published and printed and everything in late 20. I'm getting my timelines mixed up. Anyway, at the very end, I'm lamenting a little bit because I was feeling like the whole world was falling apart with all the COVID stuff. But basically on this page here, I'm describing basically my gratitude for people being interested in the crossovers I had ever drawn or had already drawn. And I just don't know if I'll ever have a chance to do this stuff again. So thank you for being there for as long as it lasted. I felt is what I was saying, like a goodbye, essentially. Because this is incredibly important stuff for me. I'm glad other people like looking at it, but I live my whole life with this as like my main priority is creating this artwork. And so many people have responded favorably. Thank you very much. I don't know your real name, so thank you very much, Leatherhead, for the kind words.
Mind the Body, Mega J Retro. I just want to tell Freddie Williams a second, sir. I think you're one of the best illustrators in the superhero comics. Does he equate the liveliness of his characters to gesture or the brush?
Thank you very much. Yeah, there's a few ways, hopefully, that you can, or I or any other artist can instill some life into the characters, which is, and other artists will give you opposing advice. So listen to whatever advice you would like that applies to you, because there's no right answer, in my opinion. Is that, generally speaking, if there's supposed to be a straight line, I tend to bend it. The closest example I just have on hand is Donatello's bow staff. It's like he's swinging it down, and so it's bending back slightly to show the motion. And if you were to I'm not trying to be super realistic, but if you were to take slow-mo video of a long piece of wood that you were whipping around, it will bend and flex. Even like metal and stuff will bend and flex. So whenever I've drawn, the Transformers, I don't draw many straight lines. And in my mind, I'm picturing that they're moving around enough that the metal is flexing a bit, or that at the very least it's tricking the camera, which I'm drawing what the camera would see. So it's a combination of that. Also, over exaggeration of facial expressions and stuff, like making their eyes, if they look shocked, make them like really big and shocked, so that a static image has some more life to it. Brushwork can do it as well. Think of brushwork as when something's really, really close to the camera. Well, that actually put it into focus. So that worked against my analogy. The point I'm getting at is, if something's moving really fast, the line work, in my opinion, should no longer be crisp and clean. It should start getting fast and jaggy and kind of crackly, like a dry brush effect. So it's all those types of things that I'm trying to do to give some life to a two-dimensional image.
Okay. We only have time for 2 more questions. So Steve Vendetta. Actually, Steve already asked a question. I'm going to go on to Too Much Toy News. Actually, this is a comment. Donatello staff does combine with Man-at-Arms staff. So they actually do the thing.
That's pretty awesome. I didn't know that. So thank you. Thank you for the scoop.
And Toby Hagen says, if someone were to send Freddy a commission request, how much reference material would he need? What's the process for a commission drawing?
Good question. I'm close to new commissions right now, because I'm the projects that I currently have commitment for. But I have a place on my website, on freddyart.com, under my art. There's a place you can order commissions from normally, but it currently says closed, like studio commissions closed, whatever it says there, so that and all the buttons are grayed out, so you can't activate them. But typically it would be, you can just go to the website, you see all the options, the price changes based on size and rendering. The price also changes based on how many characters you put in the piece. And so if you were to, want all 4 of the Ninja Turtles, that costs more than just trying one of them. And then that would take PayPal money. And then once that's done, usually people just email me a follow-up of, I want this version of Gambit, I want this version of Wolverine or Superman, and a few JPEGs. So it depends. It's a case by case. Like if it's, please draw Leonardo, I got you covered. I don't need a lot of reference for that one. But yeah, it just depends.
And the last question we have time for, 2 guys talking toys. Freddy, I really enjoyed your crossovers you've done. Your artwork is stellar. Do you have a favorite crossover?
The favorite crossover would be one that hasn't happened yet. I want to cross over basically like all of the properties and draw that for like 10 years. And then on the last page, the last stroke, I want to die in my chair and then be like slouched over on the desk. And then somebody walks in and they're like, "Oh my gosh, he finished it!" And then they just take it and run to get it printed, and they don't even know I'm there or care. But in all seriousness, I mean, Batman Ninja Turtles has sort of like has had the greatest impact in my life and in my career and my psychology, because sometimes I think anybody who's working on something they put a lot of work into, a lot of hours, it can feel like you're kind of throwing it into a void. You don't know if anyone's paying attention. And so whenever I was working on like Captain Atom, that's a book that JT Kroll, who's the writer, he and I put a ton of work in that, and that was from DC Comics, and it sold like 5 copies. Like nobody saw it or cared or purchased it really. It had very low sales, but JT and I were having a great time. But it's like after, because we did like 13 issues of it, so after a few months of it, it's kind of it's not you don't need validation, but it sure is nice when it happens. You know, you don't feel like it's just disappearing into the ether. So Batman Ninja Turtles is probably the top of the list because of getting to draw that large of properties, getting to have such positive fan or audience reaction. I didn't see a lot of negative stuff, but maybe just people are just being really nice. And then also it opened up a bunch of other doors for me to go along the way. So I have, just on a side note, Richard Bruning is the guy who reviewed my portfolio at the San Diego Comic-Con. Huge, giant thank you to him. I'm just saying this before we wrap up or anything. Peter Tomasi, who gave me my first work at DC Comics, Richard Bruning got my work in front of him. Of course, this is a long time ago. There's a bunch of people in between, of course, but then Jim Chadwick, who gave me the Batman Ninja Turtles gig, because that opened up a million other things. Rob David, who's one of the big wigs at Mattel, you know, for we worked together on He-Man, Thundercats, and then he got me back involved with the mini comics and stuff. So, and especially Kiki, my wife, she helps me out on a lot of this stuff. And there's a lot of long hours that are involved, and it's a wonderful job. It's my dream job, but it is a lot of hours. And if she wasn't so understanding, and she also helps me a lot with the work too, so she helps me with filling in blacks, and whenever I'm doing the turtle texture on the turtles, there's little freckles. She like masks off all the turtles. She scans an artwork for me. She answers a bunch of emails. She does a ton of stuff. So we're business partners as well. I want to throw out a bunch of thank yous because, I really appreciate it, and I don't want it to just be in my mind. I want people to know how much of an impact those people have made in my life.
Absolutely. It's if you don't have those connections, who are we really? I want to thank my special guest, Freddie Williams II, for being here. Freddie, thank you for giving us some of your time and your wonderful insights, your knowledge, and of course, thank you so much. Thank you for bringing us this wonderful gift of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Master Universe. But again, all the wonderful crossovers you brought over the years: Injustice, Master Universe, Power Rangers. What's it called? Godzilla.
Godzilla, Power Rangers.
It just keeps going on and on and on. And you know what? I'm sure your portfolio will continue to grow and give us more wonderful things to talk about in the coming years. Guys, please check out Freddie Williams II on his website. Freddie, how can people reach you, and what are you working on currently?
I'm working on covers for Godzilla Power Rangers Volume 2. I was going to draw the interiors, but the schedule just didn't work out. Some weird stuff happened there that one day will be open to talk about. But I'm doing the covers for those. Somebody else is doing the interiors now. And then a project that has not been announced yet. So I'm just starting on that. So it'll be a few months probably before it gets announced. I just turned in the first batch of roughs for the first issue. So we're very early on. But I'm excited for it to be announced when it comes out. So people can find me. FreddyArt.com is my web address. And then I'm on Instagram as Freddie Art. I'm on Twitter as Freddie Art. Facebook, I'm as Freddie Art or Freddie Williams. And just doing Google searches and looking at my stuff is another way to go. And thank you everyone for joining us, especially sticking with all of the early technical problems. And thank you, Jay, it was great hanging out with you. Thank you for being a cool ambassador for the toy stuff and for bringing it to my attention, because you actually knew stuff before I did sometimes. And just being a cool guy. You're a cool guy. Thanks for hanging out.
I feel the exact same, Freddie. Thank you so much. I hope you join us again sometime, and we won't have so many technical difficulties in the future. We will do what we can. Guys, thank you so much for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure. I hope you're all doing well, staying safe. And as always, everybody, thank you very much for watching. Good journey.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Geek proud.